I'm very glad to have Jurij Krpan from the gallery Kapelica here. He's an architect by profession, but in the 1990s, I think, as far as I know, meeting Marko Pelhan, who was your colleague also, you knew him from Gorica, you entered the field of performance. As far as I know, you once told at some public event this story. And Gallery Kapelica started to do its work in the 1990s. Jurij is going to... Huh? 95. In 95. And it was in this... I mean, it was very influential for certain, for the artistic scene in Ljubljana, bringing international work from body art, performance, collaboration between artistic work, including technology, and it's somehow continuation of the avant-garde tendencies in this case in Ljubljana in the period of the last 3 decades. And Jurij is going to present us a little bit genealogy of Kapelica and some significant works that were presented or developed in the frame of Kapelica, which used to be on Kersnikova Street 4 in Ljubljana and now moved to other places, to some others. Now it's using some other spaces or venues in Ljubljana. Jurij is going to tell us everything. Thank you, and Jurij, and welcome.
Thank you, Rok. I have to say that I got really emotional when seeing these videos, because I have a book about 9 evenings. I know a lot about it, but I never saw actually how it looked like. So you really made my day. And of course, it's amazing. Of course, it's amazing what technology they were using already 30 years before we started. But as you said. I was trained as an architect, and I was exhibiting my own works in galleries. It was kind of a paper architecture that was not meant to be built in a real space, but it was more like conceptual and investigating semantics in architecture. And since I was a student in 80s, and 80s in Ljubljana were really roaring, so to say, and it was one special moment when I attended a performance at Kapelica Gallery. Kapelica, it's actually a chapel. It was a chapel, and it was desecrated in, I don't know, in early 70s, and then it became a multi-purpose space. And then in 80s, I saw performance of Pozorište Kugla, Damir Bartol Lindoš. Yes, and I was so profoundly shattered by that performance that I have to say it's changed my life. And when I was invited to curate a program in that space, also the student organization who owned the space didn't have an ambition to run it as a gallery on a permanent basis, but somehow it became like this. And myself, not being trained as an art historian, I have to admit that the only curatorial premise that I have at that time was to bring in Kapelica artists that are doing artworks with that potential of changing somebody's life. That was my experience at the time. And you need to know that at that time there were only 3 galleries in Ljubljana. Nowadays there are like tens of galleries. and that there were a certain cultural scene that was very separated with their own cultural elites. They were impenetrable, they were holding their spaces and so on. When we started working in that space, nobody from the art scene really took us seriously, because they thought it's just another student organization stunt that will die next year. But it didn't. This is not chronologically. I will show you some works, and it's not chronologically, but it's somehow, I would like to graduate from the techno fascination that was present at that time. 95 was when computers got its first desktop with icons. Before it was, I don't know if you remember, but we were typing in DOS, all the commands and everything. First internet lines were drawn through the city, and we understand immediately that things are going to change profoundly. And since the beginning we were into how we can live together with technology. And we start investigating first the possibilities, like we saw in the 9 evenings, because a lot of artists, and including us, wanted to know what are the possibilities. And already then, having Marshall McLuhan quote in mind that no technology is innocent, we wanted to understand how to be on the safe side of using technology, because at that time it already lost its that military appeal that Billy Kluver mentioned before, because at that time, like 30 years ago, it was almost exclusively military developed. But from the industrial complex that supported military, and also the universities around the world were heavily connected with military and so on. But with miniaturization of computers, the electronics became more and more accessible, and it became widely used in the arts scene on different level, not only in performance, but also in visual arts. Maybe the sound artists were the first who were really into it, because actually at that time, when you are just investigating the possibility, this is the easiest thing. You just plug the other end of the wire into the amplifier, and you get something. Now, artists nowadays are really are way beyond just being fascinated with technology, but they start understanding it also on metaphysical level. Like, I don't know if you're aware, but when you buy an electronic device, very often in the warning disclaimer in the book that it's coming in the manual that it's coming with it, says that you shouldn't that it's highly recommended or even forbidden that you are not using for supporting vital functions, which is kind of strange, because we are all depending so much, our lives are depending so much on our computers and phones and all these gadgets that we are wearing with us. And since the beginning, it was clear that that there is more. than just wires, that there is more than just code, that it's in the machines. So it was about glitch aesthetic at the beginning, noise, it was already there. And there was a lot of this metaphysics of demons and ghosts in the machines, because by just looping mistakes and glitches, you start getting the patterns that were very much like metabolical ways in living organisms. So it was, how to recognize these vital functions to be able to live with machines. Of course, there was a lot of anthropomorphization of machines, like in this case, where these are two robots that are two vehicles that are running around the space, equipped with sensors, with sonars and radio receivers, and they are trying to catch each other. And when they meet, they copulate. And the whole scenario, the whole drama of finding each other, it's very much like drama we're living in our lives every time. And there were people sitting in a gallery for hours, such a naviat. Cheering for them. The anthropomorphization was obvious and maybe not even so interesting, but it proved to be the most difficult. And even now, when we are seeing the robots walking around, this is far from something that we can live with. Even that. The industry, it's really pushing these ideas around. So one of the first artists that really influenced our program was Stellark, with whom we continue working, and we are still in contact right now. And this performance for the camera, actually it was just for the photo, writing simultaneously with third hand a word evolution is something that it's like an inspirational slide that usually I start the presentation with it, because most of the people still think about arts on traditional way. When I say, I'm running a gallery, blah, 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 and say, you sell paintings, what are the artists you represent, and so on. They were strange people, and I don't know who said they look like normal, like us. And this is still the case right now, I will show you at the end, because now we are really pushing and creating an opportunity to meet artists and art thinking with the industry that somehow they lost its compass. And all these situations that we are facing now are very much like 60 years ago. So as a humankind, we didn't progress much. But yes, investigations in how we are able to use these machines that were designed to make money, actually, or be part of an industrial compound or part of the market, but on the other way, because yes, no technology is innocent since it's developed for making something, for making a product, for making an effect, for making money, for making for destroying things. But on the other side, there is so much more using this, understanding it as a material and as a systemic approach of something that we call reverse engineering of nature. Because most of the technological solutions are inspired by things from nature. And in order to be able to understand what is this, what are these connections, artists were starting applying it on their body. And that was at that time in 90s, early 2000 was maybe the most interesting part, because this visceral contact with the other, with something that was so not understood, you know, was crucial. And yeah, it's not a video, but for example, in this case of Arthur Elsenar, piece was that he was performing on stage with the computer. It was still the old box with the big monitor and so on. And computer had this text-to-speech program very early at the time. It was first time we actually hear a computer speaking, and the text was about how it would be if computer would had a possibility to show its emotions, and was moving the face of Arthur Esner that was equipped with electrodes. Or the same techniques was used by Stellark at the performance split body voltage in, voltage out in Kapelica at that time, where half of the body, half of the muscles, well, actually not all of them, but on the forearm, on the upper arm, and on his entire legs were connected with by computer, and there was an interface in the audience, and the audience was able to move him. There were 11 icons with 11 possible movements, so they could press and move his body, while the other half of his body he was using to maintain the balance, to switch between 5 cameras that were pointing on him, and that you can still see the video wall behind him. It was the old cathode monitors. And on his abdominals, he was having switchers for sound. So what he did was an immersive audio-video situation where people, the audience was involved to actually design the choreography. And at the time, it was really interesting because this interactivity was not still present in our minds. No, we have something that we call responsivity, where you press and something jumps. No? But interactive would be that when you press something, it reacts to you, and you have to react back. So it's this interaction. No, while responsiveness is just a minor, I would say, value of interaction. People were able for the first time to understand that on the other side of the button can be something alive. Huh? And that had a really interesting realization, because, of course, on the other side of the button can be a bomb as well. So this responsibility was something that we were also investigate quite a lot. There is another interactive and participatory piece where we've seen for the first time something that they were experimenting with rackets, the wireless technologies. At that time, wireless was still not really present. So Marcelli, having a concert, moving 5 instruments just by his movements, and also a video, was was a milestone at the time.
Maybe just basically, he was also included in the festival, The Beauty of Extreme, that you kind of co-curated with Sacre.
Yes. Yes, yes. We did several pieces with him. He was one of the founders of La Fura dels Baus, and then in one moment he felt too constrained in the group, so he started to work on his own things, and the performances were the first thing. Then he also went into visual arts and so on, and it was really interesting because, for example, Stellark and Marcelli, they were actually using the same software and very similar sensors. And being a young curator at that time, you know, I was, oh, it would be interesting if they would do something together, no? Which proved to be totally impossible, no? Because this is also how we learn, actually, that, you know, like Stellark, it's with all his concept that developed, you know, the concept of obsolete body, the concept of body as a host, body as a shelf, and so on, was in his techno-optimism, you know, like really, he went really far into these utopian dimensions. While, for example, Marcelli, with his La Fura dels Baus background, speaking Spanish, is so super cynical and critical to our technology, you know, had a totally different relationship with it. Although that both were super viscerally connected with it. So on that first side, there were no differences between the two. Then this is one interesting piece. This is a diploma degree of Stahl Stensli, a Norwegian artist who was studying in Hochschule für Media Kunst in Köln, and he did this Cyber SM piece where he actually designed unisex hardware where when you would wear it, you could experience pinching, hitting on your erogenous zones. And the performance was set in long distance. The first performance took place from Köln to Paris via ISDN lines. The ISDN at that time, you know, were much better than they have in 60s, but still we had something like 20 minutes of delay. Can you imagine? So there was no connection with what was happening in Köln or in Paris, but just the plus. This is the laser. You see, these are the icons you got on your desktop, and you could make a combination of your body, of your avatar. So you can be a man, but you're presenting yourself as a woman, or you can be both. And with this interconnectivity, the question of identity became very interesting, because it was the first time where you can really design, and you decided how you would appear in digital space. So what is your digital body was a question at that time. And also, it's very important to understand that porn industry was the second big industry coming from behind after military that heavily invested in internet. Because of porn, we got the first application. We got well, they speed up with colored screens, with streaming applications, so that this real-time or near real-time experience was possible. And before the porn was regulated, like heavily regulated, this was like the very upfront, and it was everywhere. So. But the internet was not so spread, so that the society didn't regulate it immediately. So, and we were all using the applications that were developed by porn industry in artworks. So at the time, speaking about wireless, no, this was the first VR piece, and this carriage was actually a carriage where everyone who was walking inside the gallery and with their heads in virtual space, needed to take computer and a battery with it, and it was as big. But it was already then that we start investigating the combinations of being present physically somewhere and remotely at the same time. That was something that was cherished by the artist quite a lot. But when the mobile phones came, at the beginning you could see people, for example, using them, but they were staying somewhere, hiding themselves. They were not just walking and screaming around, which is happening now. Because now the physical space and your super private, intimate space has no boundaries anymore. So this physical reality and virtual reality and augmented reality, had its path to that evolved. And by experiencing all these effects that technology had on individuals and society, we became aware that technology is progressing much faster than everyone who was using it. So there was no media culture at all. Even now, it's very little of it. And the first dependencies on technology start to appear, and a lot of artworks became critical on that, and this techno fascination actually start to vanish, evaporate, because the responsibility of using technology was so big, that the artists had to be very, very careful how they use it, and like in the movies, when you saw all the cables and so, this is considered like romanticism, when you see an artwork where you see a lot of cables and so on, this is very romantic thing. So this fascination on about complexity, and so this is actually not desired anymore in the media art. But still, when new technology is coming, you see it exposed, because now we know that it's like in a performance which has this inherent right to fail inscribed in the piece. It's also with technology. Technology it gets broken all the time, and we just need to know how to live with it, because this is the inner characteristic of technology. being critical about the use and the effect, and also the origins being reverse engineered from something. There were quite a lot of works starting to emerge that at the beginning I didn't really appreciate, because the technology that artists were using and self-experiment with it, these artworks were kind of really fascinating and powerful and engaging, and they really touch the audience. No, one in the pieces where one in a sudden non-human living being starts to appear, and at the beginning we understood it. Yeah, maybe artists are afraid of using it on self-experiment on their bodies, so they are using other bodies. And in a lot of cases there was also like this, but simultaneously this discourse starts to develop, you know, also the climate change, the sixth big extinction, all these problems that starts to appear in front of us, start questioning these too optimistic use of technologies. So the sensibility to non-human living beings starts to be more and more present, and this connection between the physiology of the machine and the physiology of a plant, of an animal, or an microorganisms start to become like really comparable. A lot of artists were investigating these things. For example, here we see a piece of Kuai Shen, who is living with himself. He's living with two colonies of ants, and he's working with one or another depending of the artworks he's doing, and this artwork is mostly about the sonification of the activity, and it is like the piece is seminal, no? Because quite structured the lifespan of a simple organism with three stations. You know, here we get food, and they eat the leaves of roses. So we were cutting the leaves of roses. They are connected to the central piece where they are growing their mrolišče, well, the swarm thing, with the mother ant in it, and there is a cemetery at the end. And the cameras here are and also microphones are monitoring the activity of building the structure, and the signals are then transferred into what is not seen on the video. It's on the both sides. There were like two turntables. And since the ants are using stridulating organ, it means like a cicada. You know, we hear cicadas, but we don't hear ants. And they're also moving slowly, and the microphones were so sensitive that they could hear it, and they were turning these turntables and scratching it. So there were like two cultural codes: the human one, you know, with scratching on the vinyls, and the ants communicating with themselves. No, and that was, you know, like you very easily connect with something that is, you know, totally other with it. Also, in this piece, Circadian Drift, there was like a terrarium, and there were laboratory rats in it, and the terrarium was equipped with sensors. So the artist developed an app, for mobile app, and you could connect with your rat. And circadian rhythm, it's connected to the rhythm of sunset and sunrise and sunset. So all all other species are very much clocked around this rhythm, but we humans not. So when the dark is coming, we open the lights, and our body enters in a hormone stress every time. We are able to manage it, but we are stressed. And in this application, you are able to, by being connected with your rat, you decided, being awake after sunset, also the rat had to be awake. So, and there were like stress monitors, and the responsibility of your rat was put as a question. So you had two possibilities. Or you just give back the phone and the applications, or you went to bed. And there were like both situations, you know, and it was this interspecies communication, actually connection, not a real communication, that was put for the first time, you know, as a question. How can we communicate? Well, in order to be able to communicate, we need to understand, you know, what communication is. And there is another piece, also participatory, not interactive, rather responsive, where you lie into a small capsule, and these rounded circles are actually petri dishes with mycelium growing in, and you can see like, no, is it working? Here it's electrode, and here it's electrode, and here in between is just mycelium. So mycelium is considered as the wood wide web, no? But this is like a wild speculation, no? Although that the biologists are teaching us that in nature, where there is a mycelium, all of the plants are functioning better, because they communicate. They use microwaves. This is a flow of signals, and between different plants, not only between mushrooms. And here you were able to send a signal of your heartbeat taken by a sensor through the mycelium, and of course the only thing you could experience was quite a delay, no? So you got like doop doop, and then you heard it after 20 seconds. And you could also appear the mycelium itself, because it was in this path between the electrodes, didn't behave well. So very probably this is what was the speculation, was that every time that when the signal passes, the mycelium is burned, no, because the signal was too strong. Because it was electrical signal, it was not electrochemical signal. No? And being able to develop an empathy towards something that is obviously inert, no, was and still is a big task, because this micro-performativity, as we call it, has the same implications as when artists are performing with and self-experimenting. Just the spectacle, it's totally different, no? And being critical toward anthropocentric art, and working with non-human living beings ethically, seriously, this adds, you know, the importance and responsibility that is equally demanding as witnessing and self-experimentation on the body, on the human body, minus spectacle, which became like, you know, something that we don't want anymore, because this spectacle and this mystification and fetishization of humans that actually subordinated everything, every living beings, and including material with their extractivism, is something that needs to be critical. And all these backgrounds in the investigations, artistic investigations, are actually how to understand non-human living beings in order to be able to reshape and reorganize this subordination of white male that sits on top of the pyramid and it was able to subordinate every living beings under it. So is it a challenge? But still, it is a mission. And this is why this challenge is so widely accepted. Here we see one participatory piece as well. It looks like super dry and cold, but it's a vitrine full of petri dishes of the visitors who came at the opening. Artists took the sample from their body, and she was growing them, their microbiome on the petri dishes, which is another dimension that came in, questioning what is the body. No? Because we know that on our body there is so much non-somatic cells like the fungi and bacteria and viruses and algae and so actually if we count them they are more than somatic cells. So human body, it's not the one, it's a biotope, it's many, and when this biotope loses the balance, we got ill. We stop functioning. So it's, you know, how we deal with non-human on our body, you know, and we also know that every 7 years we change all of the somatic cells. So the question of identity went on biotechnological level, you know, which became more and more accessible and enable us that we establish 3 laboratories in Kapelica. Actually, once we start establishing new programs, we moved from only Kapelica Gallery, it became only a project. Now we are Kersnikova Institute, which is not accurate anymore because Rok said that we had to move. But I have just an ellipsis. We are now still in the center, in Likozarja, just, I don't know, 300 meters from Kersnikova street. But we experienced quite a devastating fire in July, so it's now time to rise as a phoenix with different name, with, you know, another structure and so on. So this is something that is ahead of us. However, we have Biotech now, which is quite well-equipped biotechnological laboratory that is enabling us to work with cells, mostly with somatic cells, mammals. Because we learned that if we combine with non-human cells, the somatic cells got infected, and we were unable. So the artworks were dying before they were exposed. So we had to establish another place that we call Vivarium, which is a place for animal, plants, and robots. It's actually for bionics. And there is a third one, which is called Rampa, which is dedicated to mechatronics, actually to electronics and all from sound to robotics, nothing wet. So we have hardware, software, wetware. We even employed one scientist who is biotechnologist and who is able to help artists to develop their works. So what you mentioned before, you know, this horizontal situation, working together with engineers and with scientists, this became a norm. You can't use scientific knowledge and engineer skills without understand what they are. And by working, by helping them to be immersed with all these, not only technology, but also standards, how to use it. What are the, because we work with many artists, and at least every time when you leave the space, you have to put it tight for the other artist, which is not the case in your studio, for example, where you need to have everything around this creative mess. It's actually not possible in a lab. But still, you need to have an engineer like they were here, like they are totally amazed with the possibility of understanding and what is their knowledge and expertise meaning for others. A lot of them are saying, well, we understood that working hard is not enough. We need to communicate to the world what we are doing. So we are not just throwing bombs. We do also other things. But since they're coming from the schools that is cultivating this so-called situated knowledge, that are like super narrow, they know things in depth, but and they don't bother for what their knowledge, expertise, and products will be used for. So no ethical concerns at all. And sometimes when they recognize themselves in the artistic words, it has really profound impact on their life, and vice versa. Also, like artists are coming like totally crazy, thinking everything is possible, but they understand how difficult, for example, it's to sustain a simple cell. And because you can see it if died, you just throw it into the toilet. No, it is not the case. If you really stay behind your work, this is unbearable. So you have to do everything. You have to wake up in the middle of the night, if necessary, to feed the medium in the culture. Or for example, it's the opening, and after the opening, 2 days you are like dead at home. This is not existing. You have to feed. You have to live with your artwork. And after the exhibition, this is huge discussion even now. How to deal with it, of not being understood as just being neglecting the fact that you were working with another living beings, by not just using it, because this distinction between using and collaboration, it's now the threshold. When you see a work which most of the people are calling it bioart, which we hate this term, because it's flattening the whole discourse. If you're using a living organism or living culture, it's not important how alive it is and what kind of is. It's important what you do with it and how you do with it and how you work with. This is how it's important. And you have a variety, myriad of different approaches, from the crappy one, really bad one, from responsible and good one. And this is, this, we call it biomediality as a field. So you have this as you understand it as a medium, but we at Kersnikova went even further on. So we stop using mediality at all. So it's not intermedia or transmedia and so on. It's not on objectivity. It's not on materiality, it's on the process. So we call it contemporary investigative art. And investigative, it's not research as in science, because we are not as rigorous as scientists, and the aim, it's not the same. It's more like in forensics, you know, when you collect bits and pieces, and then you create a story around, or you put them, you know, like like in archaeology, you find some pieces,
kind of pieces of ruins.
Ceramic, of ceramic vase, and then you try to figure it out how the vase is, and you build it with the plaster, what it's missing. No, so this is the story then of these three pieces you found, and this is how this investigating is functioning here. It's more about stories. It's not about proofs, you know, like in research. Plus, it implies not the end object as D1, which is like the metaphysical crap, but it's a process. And we see the artists how are developing their idiolect, their way of saying in sync and things, and we see it, you know, as an ever evolving or evolving process. Of course, showing this micro-performativity or molecular sculpturing, like in this case, where artist was using, for example, one amino acid from her blood, and this amino acid, through a special protocol that took place in this chamber, that it's a glove box, it's an incubator, and it's a growth chamber in one. This is something that is not existing in scientific environment. This is blasphemy for them. You know, you have either incubator or you have growth chamber. No, you have glove box and you have sterile boot and so on. No? But she created this glove box so that the audience was able to take part in the process of the genetically modification of the yeast microorganism. Because this amino acid was inserted into the metabolical path, and metabolism is something that it's the building block of a living thing, living being. No? So everything that has metabolic path is alive. So the information that was sent in space was about metabolic path. So whoever will get it, if somebody will get it, would understand that it's something alive, it's there. The genetically modified yeast was then produced, instead of producing alcohol, it started to producing lactic acid. And it didn't really thrive, so we sent it to one institute in Amsterdam, and they tweak it a little bit, and they sent the samples back, and she was perfect. And she did this lactic acid, that it's an additive that it's used in food industry. And we know that a lot of food we eat, it's genetically modified already, or it's anyhow other ways modified. And that the project raised this question, you know, because you are what you eat, no? And this is this ultimate dilemma. We are trying to establish a total sensibility toward other human beings, non-human beings, but at the end we eat them. And plants are not the answers. Vegetarians, it's not the answer. So this dilemma, this ethical dilemma, it's always there. And how to make people understand this drama that is taking place in pursuing of something alive, communicating with something alive, or even designing something alive. This responsibility. This is not just one test tube and a small shaker where you do like a PCR when you multiply the DNA and so on. So the only way is to make these participatory situations where people can take part, and by doing it, they understand how these things are happening. So it's a special kind of, every artist is trying to foresee a choreography. They plan, like dramaturgically plan, how the people will come into their art piece, whether they will interact or not, what kind of interaction is going to take place, or there will be no interaction at all because they will kill the culture on the other side. No? And of course, living in this visual art, belle arti environment is super difficult to communicate this to the gallery visitors. So you need to know something before, and this is why we do quite a lot of artworks that it's making of. It's part of the exhibition. So the people can come and see, how this collaboration is taking place. Unfortunately, we are living in this environment that has very restricted time and so on. It's not a lot of time that it's happening, but we do create a lot of situations, not only making of, but there are also visits to the workshops. We do a lot of workshops for kids, youngsters, and so on, so that we kind of spread this knowledge and sensitivity, responsibility, ethics, and so on.
Yeah, I would just like to propose that you slowly close this official part so that we have at least some time for questions or comments or dialogue.
Okay.
And I would just say that I will have to give you a microphone if you have some comments, because we are streaming and recording the session.
Okay, I will wrap up. This is just speaking about procedure in the laboratories. That was Symbiotica cultivating 1/4 of size of the ear that Stellark was later on actually embedded in his arm as an interface. We did one trans-species hybridization piece where artist was taking a horse plasma into her body, being able to establish a connection physically with another human beings. That it's very similar to another piece that also took quite a lot of time to come there, of Maja Smrekar, where she was using dog somatic cell to hybridize her I should say ovarium is jajnik, her reproductive cell, creating this potentiality of hybrid species, and that open up this span, from the mythology where every culture in the world has their own werewolves and these myths, to the dystopian future where, of massive overpopulation, the only food will be humans themselves. So the werewolves could fit. The quantum biology is one field that is super interesting, because one in a sudden we know that quantum phenomena doesn't happen only in very low temperatures or very high temperatures or on a very small scale, but it happens in real time as well. AI that came, it's super intriguing, because one in a sudden, by feeding AI with non-human data, we can get access to the non-human living beings like totally in a different way. Because in big data allows you to see things, because in big data the patterns are emerging, and you see things that you cannot see it otherwise. See it, I mean metaphorically, understand it. Or in this piece, a cucumber plant was monitored by a camera and with LiDAR, the data feed went to AI, and AI was lowering the balls to the tentacles, and the cucumber was gripping or unleashing and grip another one, and that was like totally mind-boggling. Why? So the name of the piece is Play, no? Like PLA. To be able to understand, these causalities in the interaction between us and the other, or in this case, this is the product of our laboratory of Vivarium, which is a garden. It's actually a vertical garden. Every plant is equipped with sensors. The sensors send signals to a central computer, and the spider bot is feeding the plants. So it's this plant machine interaction, where in the domain of food, plants will be able to emancipate from humans, because we are speaking about degrowth. No, which is another thing that is bending our minds. It's who will decide how much is enough, because the growth is not less, it's definitely not more. It's not just less, but how much is enough. And we humans are very bad in deciding how much is enough. So these interactions between plants and machines can create a situation of food production, where you will go and ask and take as much as it's necessary that the ecosystem is in balance. In order to be able to work on these different premises, not only that we are using existing technology, but artists are building other technologies. So there are several programs where we are bringing artists to industry, to labs, to engineers, and they develop things that are not for market, but for artistic uses. And here we see this. Sorry, just the slides. This is the incubator that is actually part of the exhibition. And in this piece here in the middle, it's a small petri dish with neurons. These neurons' activities are sensitized by multi-array electrodes, sending the signals into amplifier, and amplifiers are first sending the to one library of robotic possible movements, and this weak signal, it's actually designing the possible skeleton that this stupid brain could manipulate, and that was then built. This is the mobile lab that we create, so that we can travel with this kind of works. They cannot be exhibited in a gallery as such, but we come with the whole lab in it. You can see this incubator here. This is laminarium and so on. And the last slide is, this is the robot that is then moved. Of course, it's not a movement of Boston Robotics jumping, making loops and so on, but it's more like showing this possible hybridization between living cells and then body, approaching to this myth of singularity, where technology and biology wouldn't be distinguished anymore. No, so that was the short presentation of what we are doing, and of course there is much more. Not all of the projects are straightforward. There are a lot of failures and trials and errors, but this is more or less where we are right now.
This was super inspiring, and I would invite the audience to either ask a question, make a comment, or on what we've heard. or what we presented at the, yeah.
So thank you for the presentation. I personally don't work with like multi-species, but I grow, what is it? I do lacto fermentation. I grow bacteria. And I found it interesting because it's something that I have to live with. It's not, I mean, okay, maybe it's like 1 week, 2 weeks to ferment, but then it goes on and on and on. So I was like reflecting on like, I guess like you mentioned, like you have the lab, like you also have like workshops, but is this kind of like cycle of like exhibiting in a gallery, is it a challenge for you, or is it something actually like good that, well, I don't know, like what is it about living with the species and having this kind of durational exhibitions? Is it like a tension or not?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that, like right now we are working for maybe 2 years, but there will be years ahead on two curatorial premises. One is hybrid intelligence and one is next bodies. Hybrid intelligence is our aim to connect to other way of cognitions. No? So for example, we are working with one artist coming from France, Vivienne Roussel, who is perfect in growing kombucha. I don't know if you meant kombucha, but you know he goes way beyond just drinking. No, kombucha is very interesting microbial organism because it comes to life with humans. So it was a co-evolution with humans. No, because you can find it in nature, but not in a form of kombucha. No, it started to be part of humankind with nomads living in open, and because they ate just meat, they figure out that the tea that got that fermented, it's actually good for their digestion and health, and so this is how they start growing it. But Vivienne, for example, he is like really good in growing it on different ways, so that the crystallization of this bacterial cellulose is different. And in meantime, we come up to one scientific paper investigating memristors in non-human living in plants, actually, and there are memristors in kombucha as well. So he's growing now a biocybernetic thing that will be able to that he will be able to harvest the activity and memorization from it. So, coming back to your question, in order to do that, you need to grow it, and you need to, you know, this grow your own paradigm. It's like super real in our lab, and we need to sustain, even when they go away, we need to keep them alive, and they keep coming back. Maybe other artists are coming, or scientists, and so the whole thing became like a hub. And it's not easy, especially now. For example, with fire, we had everything died. But then, for example, now we have one group working with us on also using one bacteria, which is magnetotactical bacteria. It's a bacteria that doesn't need oxygen. It was present on Earth before the atmosphere was formed. You can still find it in the bottom of deep and very cold lakes. And this magnetotactical bacteria has inside so-called magnetosomes, which is a tiny iron stick that functions like a compass, like a bussola. And when archaeologists dig deep into the earth, by finding them and finding out what is the orientation of this bacteria, they can understand what was the magnetosphere of the planet at that time. So they already function as a memory of the planet. And now these artists are growing them and will use it to memorize data, which tackles another field that we are very much into it. It's something that's called slow computing and biocomputing that takes place in large areas, like in forests. And being able to understand that, we aim to create something that we call hybrid intelligence, that would include intelligence of non-human living beings in the way of understanding things. Because, for example, the quantum paradigm, we know how to prove it, but we don't understand it. So this is like the ultimate barrier of a human rational cognition right now. And these are different approaches to that kind of slow computing, also working with memory stores and so on. So you need to grow. You need to live with it. We take it for serious.
Any other questions or comments or thoughts?
Hi, thanks very much for this presentation. It's blown my mind. The production team I work with in Prague and the Czech Republic has been, let's say, experimenting with various projects relating to dance and natural science, and we've been struggling a lot and making mistakes as we go, and probably mistakes that, others have made and we didn't need to repeat. But anyway, I mean, being able to see a long-term devotion to this kind of work is amazing. And I have to admit, I even had the arrogance to come here and think that this is about technology and that's not so interesting. And then it turned out to be exactly about everything we are trying to deal with. One of the first troubles we have is, we have artists who are interested in working on questions of natural science, but we have had troubles bringing scientists into the project, sometimes because they are even scared or have different timelines or don't understand the way we work. An example that I love is of a Hungarian artist who wanted actually to be exploring animal feed and how we feed the animals that then we consume, and what the effect that has on the animals and then on us. And she found a fantastic scientist, but when he saw videos of her dance practice, including some nakedness, he said, I don't want anything to do with this. So the fact that you have a devoted scientist in the team, for example, that's just, is that a long-term thing or is that just a short project?
No, he is with us for almost 10 years now, although that speaking about devotion, I'm not really it's not that I'm really satisfied with, but he's at least functioning as somebody who speaks different language and is able to connect us with other scientists. And our experiences so far is that this scientific world is super toxic. It's like in academia, they compete, it's Squid Game, everyone against everyone, and they are afraid to being connected to art world, because immediately from the scientific perspective, their colleagues would perceive them as not serious. So the most successful collaborations were actually with senior scientists that are not in this competition process anymore. They don't give a fuck about academia, and so they did their own careers. They know that there is more than just science, and they're willing to help. So that would be one recommendation. Most of the time happens just before they got retired, because then they lose this fear of being stigmatized by colleagues. But for example, recently I was contacted by one. I just had a talk in Barcelona 14 days ago, and then one institute contacted me that they want to collaborate, and so slowly the thing changes, you know, because the scientists themselves. Well, one is science communication. This is what they need to do, and they are very bad at it. You know, so they need somebody who is into narrative and who can really do something with it. Now, very often we don't understand each other, so they just want the visualization of something that they do. But with a lot of them, we come past just this simple visualization, sonification, decorative approach, where one is just using skills and knowledge of another, and there is no collaboration between it. But for example, also here at the University of Biotechnology, we have one fruitful collaboration because they know that their students are going to live in a different world. You know, and the curriculum they have, it's something that doesn't equip their students with a lot of incentive. You know? Because it's not enough that you're just scientist. You need to care about science. You need to care about your profession. You need to do more. You know? While nowadays schools are, you know, like into just drilling and training people, kids, you know, they are not creative, they don't reflect, they don't engage in communities, in society, you know, they just, they are super atomicized, they finish their school and then embed themselves as a small wheel in a big machine, and after 3 o'clock in the afternoon they go cycling. And this is their life.
Yes. I just had one last related question, and thanks also for this concept of forensics as opposed to research, because that's what we have been stuck in. It's not binary. There's more possibilities. Yes. I'm just like mind blown. What was my question? So the scientist that you do work with, what is his her background or their background?
Yeah. Well, actually, we got in contact with him because he's also a hacker. You know, he's into this open source Linux scene and so on. This was one part of activities, but he was trained as a biotechnologist. And then we said, "Oh, Christian, come, let's work together." And so, but of course, at the beginning, we thought, you know, like biotechnology, this is everything, you know. But in biotechnologies you have, you know, synthetic biology, which is several words from evolution biology, for example. You know, and it's all of our interests, and you have there are so many branches, you know. But coming or just the first call or first email sent from him, by him, you know, it's much easier to open up the doors. We were collaborating with, and we did some of developments of the artworks in the laboratories, but we were always depending on their time schedule. So we were working after hours, weekends, festive days, and so on. And we never knew when the project will be finished because we were so dependent. And then when we start building our own laboratories, then one in a sudden it became like more balanced, the whole thing, because some of the easiest procedures you can do it by your own. No, it's not difficult to learn. You just need to learn something you didn't learn at the art school. You know, like pipetting. It's micro, but it's all there. And we all know numbers, and you just need to repeat 100 times, and then you know. No? You don't need a lab at the university to do that. And so we are optimizing their time, their involvement. And when we are pushing some project, like too far on the uncharted territory, because in science you have a lot of uncharted territories, and these are exactly the territories where artists want to be, flatliners. It's easier for scientists to come to us, and not being actually being in a safe environment. Because especially the old ones, they are curious what we are doing. So sometimes they say, "Oh, don't mention me. No, I don't want to be affiliated with your artwork whatsoever, but I will come and I will help."
Thanks for that, because some of the people in our team have been saying, yeah, what we need to do is to speak to the young artists, because they're the ones that will be more open-minded. So that's a really interesting thought.
Yeah, we are going to conclude the morning session. I would like to say that in the afternoon at 4 o'clock we have another session, Dance and Technology Seminar, which is organized in the frame of MODINA EU project. I would like to thank Jurij Krpan for this inspiring presentation, and also I think it goes so well along our motto, of Co-Festival 2024, we are beings of human origin. And yeah. And I think it gives a lot of possible and potential thought how contemporary dance could be part of this kind of investigation, researches, and artistic and scientific environments. I'm sure that a lot of thoughts could be induced from this presentation that you had, but it's a lot of work, a lot of very, very serious work. Thank you, and I guess for people who are following us on streaming, see you at 4 o'clock. Thanks.